All right. Looks like we're live. How's everyone doing today? Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Jason Levine. And I'm going to let some people file in the room here. Hopefully you're all seeing me clearly. What's up, Evil Cerise? All right. Awesome. Very glad to hear. Hello, Pierre Julien. Saifullah, nice to see you. Isaiah Design Studio, hi, wrong way. All right, so today we're talking about part 2 of doing some sound design for film, video, and games. Hey Des, how's it going? Hey Mahesh, Mr. Mel, Wally Conductor. Very, very long time ago. How are you doing, man? Mayor, Alejandro, Johannes. And really kind of a continuation of where we left off two Mondays ago, where we focused actually a lot on some of the game sound effects. Actually, specifically today, I'm going to show you just a couple quick techniques at a Premiere. Now, you can do this exact same thing in Audition. I just happen to have this session launched in Premiere. In fact, I may wind up sending it over to Audition to show you one additional feature there. And based around doing some sound design for background sound in a scene. And then we'll kind of cut back over to Audition, and I'm going to show you the process and go through sort of the process and some techniques for sound design for title sequence intros. And one that I did a little over a year ago with someone some of you may know from YouTube and Twitch, incredible animator, 3D compositor, Cinema 4D user, Synapse. So he was on a live stream with us some time ago, and we did this intro together where he did the graphics and I did all the music and sound design for something called Creativity 360. So we're going to break that down and kind of start from there and kind of show you how that was all done. And again, focusing largely on using loopology content. So I'll put up the URL in just a bit here. In fact, here, let me go ahead and while more people are filing in. By the way, please let me know where you're coming from. Great to have you all here. Daniel from Israel, Mauricio from Bolivia, UVM Video, David Pillard from France, bonjour. Dylan, Wallace, Almuiz Bila, Stalin, how are you? HD Frames, what's up from Austria? Lucas, very nice. Katie Morton, thank you so much. Simakiko from Italy, very nice to see you all. Okay, so here, let me just pull up the URL very quickly so I can switch over to my screen and let you see that. Bear with me here. So these are the files that you can, whoops, that's not what I want. I want loopology. Files that you can use and download. Katie's in LA. So let me go ahead and just switch over my screen real fast here. And you can actually access this from my blog, which I seldom use anymore. You go to buddhajewmusic.com, that's the name of my publishing company, and just search on loopology. Loopology contains 10, 15, 20,000 pieces of royalty-free music, sound effects, and music beds, which you can use in any and all of your productions. Or just to go to the URL directly here. Here it is, right at the top. Just leave that up for a second here. Okay. So, and you can probably find this on adobe.com, although it's probably just it's probably just easier for you to go from my blog, as I said. If you just go to Buddha Drew Music and search on loopology, you'll be able to find it. Chris, you ready to play Bubblecano? Yes, if you watch part 1. So I won't be showing Bubblecano today. This will be more on Creativity 360, but something else, needless to say, that we actually did on one of our Twitch live streams a year ago. Morton from Oslo, very nice to have you with me. Presona Studio 1 for your film score music productions. Nice, Skyhawk. Akshay, all right. Oh, and Wally Connectors in Poland, that's right. Great to see you all here. Oh, we've got some people from Colombia. Juan Carlos, very nice. All right. Terrific. Thank you, Daniel, for that. Okay. So hopefully you have that URL. If not, again, you can always find it on my site, which is buddhajewmusic.com. I don't update that very often anymore, but still legit, still around, still kicking. Okay, so we're going to start here with recreating the sound of an environment, in this case, a bar scene. So many of you who've watched any of the streams over the last 6-8 months or so, this is some footage from a film that we licensed called See You Around, written and directed by a guy named Oren Brimmer. You can actually find this film on Vimeo. It's a short film, 22 minutes. Absolutely hilarious, and actually has a couple of actors that well-known actors that you'll know from some other HBO shows and things. But what I wanted to do was, since we were talking about all kind of the manual ways of doing everything on Monday, I thought I'd start today by showcasing a little of the Essential Sound panel. So what's kind of cool about Essential Sound, for those of you unfamiliar, is that this gives you sort of all the tools that you need to do sound mixing, design, really just, it's basically sound mixing, design, and all sort of in a self-contained panel, all with very easy to access controls and easy to manipulate controls. There's a lot of intense things, some AI and other things going on under the hood or in the background that you never have to expose. So if you're comfortable with just a single slider and kind of doing things quick and easy, this is really the way to do it. And for this particular kind of workflow, I think this works really, really well. So we're going to start by kind of trying to create the bar scene sound here in this scene from the film. Okay. Very quickly, get to a couple of questions here. Oh, nice. Pierre Julien says you can get the link directly in the help menu inside of Audition. Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, actually, I think I did. I sort of knew that. Right? Is it in here still? Where is it? Download sound effects and more. Oh, sure enough. There it is. Right? I'll just keep showing that very long URL in my blog. Okay. Yeah. So that's in the help menu, which I obviously don't go to very often. Okay, what's up, Shar? Hey, Manoj. So, very quickly, what's the difference between Adobe Audition and other sound design software? The main difference is that Adobe Audition does not currently have any MIDI support. Does everything else. 5.1, editing, multi-track recording, it's unlimited tracks, VST, VST3, AU plugins, all that kind of stuff. Controller support, spectral noise reduction, all the things that you would want to do in a DAW. Unfortunately, it does not have any MIDI support. It does not have VST-Eyes, so virtual instrument support. And it currently does not have a looping engine, meaning that you can put sort of loop-based files in there and then readjust tempo across multiple files. It did once in a version called Audition 3 from about 10 years ago. We don't currently support that. Outside of that, though, it's very much like all other DAWs, except, of course, that it has a direct link integration with Premiere Pro, After Effects, and others. Okay. Very cool. Oh, all right, we got Claude from Orlando. Very nice. John from Ireland. Okay. Oh, that's very nice, Wally. Thank you for that. Okay. So let's take a quick listen to this. So again, this is a scene from a bar, and actually what you're hearing, this is the dialogue, which I've already cleaned up using Essential Sound. Now, one of the cool things and what makes this essential is that to work with this, basically you just kind of define what the audio is that you're working with, and then it gives you all the things you need or would typically use to treat that audio. So let's take a quick look and listen to this scene just as it is with just the dialogue. And for those of you who are not sort of familiar, you know, when you shoot things on location on set, sometimes you use some of the ambient sound. Normally, the set is totally quiet and all of the sound is put back in for obvious reasons. You're trying to capture the dialogue so that you don't have to do dialogue replacement later. So everyone on scene is, you know, they're pretending to drink and play pool and have a good time, but they're actually silent. And even when they're talking, they're just, and all that stuff is put in later. So let's take a quick look and listen to this first scene from See You Around. Oh, and I didn't want the music in there. That's my bad. Hold on. I just want you to have kind of the complete experience here. Why did that go back on? Mute that. Okay. I must have automation in there. It's fine. There we go.
Hi, yeah, hi. I'd like to get a drink, please.
Okay.
Great. I'd like an elderberry liqueur.
Oh, actually, we don't have that.
I've been here before, and I've definitely had it here, so you have it.
Okay. All right, so you get the idea. Put my camera back on. So again, very common for you to have a quiet set, and you're going to recreate the sound of the bar, of all the ambience, of everything kind of behind you. All right. So in this case, what I've done is I've added 2 files of different sort of bar background sound. All right. And if I go ahead and unmute these real quickly, I can solo them. So here's the first one. Let's take a quick listen to this. All right. Typical kind of restaurant ambience there. All right. Glasses clinking, people talking. Now, one thing you'll notice is now this says bar big, 50 people chatting. Okay. So, I don't know how big this bar is, but it looks bigger than about 50. The other thing you'll notice that in this particular sound effect, of course, is that it's very dry and upfront. All right, there's a lot of like discrete clinking, discrete sounds. And in this scene, when they're sort of, turning, talking to one another, you wouldn't really hear any discrete sound of the bar. If anything, it's going to be kind of in the background and kind of echoey. And again, there's meant to be music here. There's a band in the bar. So we're going to recreate all of that, all right? But you got to start somewhere. So the first file that I have here is just this very dry, big bar sound. The second one is kind of similar. This is another one down here. Let's play this back as well. Let's see this on track 7, okay? Same kind of thing. Now this one I think I've already got, I've already got some effects on there. Getting ahead of myself. I did some of this before we started. So again, play this. Could be anything. It could be, again, you hear some clinking and some glass, and this room actually sounds a little bit bigger. Again, it's probably okay. And remember we talked about 2 Mondays ago about combining. Right? Seldom do you find just one sound when doing sound design that kind of does it all. You might be able to. We could get away with one of these. But I tend to think when you kind of mix and combine things, it somehow just works and becomes a little bit more real. Now, outside of that, of course, we have all of these files in Loopology. So just to preview them quickly, I'm going to quickly click back over to Audition, where we're going to go into the media browser. You've got the same media browser in Premiere. You just have some better playback and loop options here. So what you can see is I'm inside the Loopology folder. Again, if you go to that link from within Audition that we just showed moments ago that Pierre-Julien mentioned was in the app right here, download sound effects and more. In sound effects, you've got about 15 or 20 zipped collections of all different types of sounds, and you can kind of see them down here. So ambience, animals, cartoon sounds, fire, explosions, Foley. There's even more. I didn't even download all of the folders. But I'm looking for ambient sound, right? And as I was kind of scrolling through here, I was looking for bar. This collection didn't actually have any bar sounds, but it did have 2 that were restaurant kitchens. So here's the first one. And this kind of just sounds like, you can hear there's some kind of like hum, whistle, all right? Nothing spectacular here. The second one, however, again, you got more moving plates down on a counter. Now, I don't know what's going on in this kitchen. It doesn't matter. It's just, you're just trying to create that atmosphere. Remember, this is all going to be in the background. It'll be masked, likely with some reverb and leveraging a little bit of stereo expansion. It's just to kind of recreate the scene and recreate the feeling of where they are, okay? So that one's probably going to work. Now, something else to keep in mind, it doesn't have to be a restaurant. If you just kind of need people talking and kind of chaos, here's another one, theater concession. See what that sounds like. Kind of a dead theater. They're not selling a lot of concessions there, evidently. Shopping area. All right, see this one. Some of these are very quiet. Clearly not like a New York City shopping area. Okay. But you get the idea. All right. So it doesn't have to be specific. Would you use something like traffic with railroad? No, because that's not the environment. But really, any interior sound where there's some kind of, like this one. Well, that's really specific. Public restroom, man enters, peas, wash hands, exit. Okay, maybe we won't listen to that one. But you get the idea. Even like a parking garage, although you don't want necessarily honking horns per se. Just something with people and sound, which is just going to be masked in the background. So let's go with the one that I suggested first, which is this ambience restaurant kitchen. So I'm going to bounce back over to Premiere. I've got my media browser up here. I'll pull the same file in. So here it is, ambience restaurant kitchen. Let's drag that one down into this track 6 right here. Okay. Now again, we can double click on this to bring it into the source monitor. We can see the waveform here. Just take a quick listen to see what's going on in here. All right, yeah. I like this because this actually has a lot of the clinking. Like some of the others, there's a lot of chatter. There's not quite, and there's like a little too much discrete cheersing and stuff, which just gets in the way. This will be perfect because if we place this again in some nice sort of background reverb, you're just going to have that real essence of the bar, of the chaos of being in a bar scene. Yeah, this is really perfect. And then right at the beginning here, I think it's just kind of noisy. Yeah, it's like kind of nothing. So actually, we could probably scrub this up, just shorten this a bit, something like that. Wind this back. And if need be, if I hold down Alt or Option, I can just duplicate another instance of this. All right, just to fit the duration inside the sequence here. Now, one thing to keep in mind, again, this is ambient sound, so it doesn't really matter. But if you want to kind of smooth the transition of here, of course, yeah, I mean, you don't even really need it. But this could be an example of where you might use a real simple audio transition, just a basic constant power crossfade. Right over top, right here, the crossfade can be as long or short as need be. It's really just to kind of smooth the transition. Okay, so now when we take a listen to this, let's go ahead and unsolo. And let's take a listen with these 3 sound effects inside of our edit now, all right? And hold on, let me turn off my, I don't want that music to be on at all. Okay, that's track 9. I've got some automation on here, so I'm just going to turn that off. We're going to mute that. Okay.
Hi, yeah, hi. I'd like to get a drink, please.
Okay.
Great. I'd like an elderberry.
Oh, actually, we don't have that.
I've been here before, and I've definitely had it here, so you
Oh, okay. You know, I've only been...
Okay. So obviously, volumes aside, the environment doesn't sound right? It's too clean. Now, if that sounds okay to you, that's awesome. However, to the more discerning ear, remember, we're trying to kind of recreate the actual environment. And when you're talking to people, and again, if you were filming someone at the bar, that background noise is going to be very muted and obscured. You're not going to hear sort of discrete clinks and clanks of plates and those kinds of things. So we need to mask that with reverb. We need to mask that with some effects. So to begin that process, here's what we do inside of Essential Sound. So first of all, I'm going to multi-select across all of these ambience tracks inside of the timeline here. So I'm going to select across these 3 tracks, which you can see I've named Ambi Bar, Ambi 2 is track 7, and track 6, I'll rename that in just a moment. And what we're going to do is we're going to select the type as ambience, okay? And this is automatically now going to denote each and every one of these as an ambient type. Now, it looks like I had some of these selected already, so sorry for that. This is... Arg. Already applied some things to it, which I didn't want to. That's fine. I'm just going to reselect all these. Normally, I would do this in a single selected batch. All right, just making sure they're all selected here. Cool, cool. Last one. Good. Okay. And we'll start with the bar up here. I'm going to solo these. All right. So what do you have available to you in here? Well, first of all, you've got some presets. So you can see you've got something like focused, from outside, room tone, wide and deep. Okay, now these are kind of presets just to sort of get you started. So if we take a listen, before we select anything at all, let's just listen back. I'll make this a little bit louder to this bar sound right here. What's up, Terry White? Skyhawk, you're getting confused. Yeah, no, that was just momentary, just to show you in the media browser for previewing. We're in Premiere. I'll let you know when we go back to Audition. Okay, so it's very, very dry. So if we were to go something like this from the outside, what you can see is that it winds up adding some reverb. And it adds this preset called outside ambience. Okay? And now when I play this back, you can see it's almost, it's like it's too buried. It's almost inaudible. That's actually not a very good preset. Haven't tried that one before. That's fine. We're going to get you started. And of course, all of these can be edited and modified. All right, so let's go ahead and start with turning on some reverb. And let's maybe do something like a large room ambience. I don't know what outside ambience is really trying to emulate there. We do have other presets called like from the outside, which are a little bit better. And I'll show you how you can access even more presets in just a moment. So let's start with large room ambience. What we're going to do is we're going to increase the amount here over time to let you hear what this is doing. I'll make this also a little bit louder just because it's by itself for right now. And you'll see that as I drag the amount slider, we're basically starting to push the sound of that bar further and further back. All right. So before, after. Before, after. All right. I'm even going to put on headphones because it's kind of hard for me to hear this over speakers. All right. Okay. So it sounds okay. Now, if you were listening in headphones, you'll notice that it's also, the ambience also makes it not only a bit more echoey, but it puts it kind of, now while it's not as discreet in terms of the clinks and clanks, I feel like the dialogue, there's like too much going on. So I want to kind of widen this to create a little scoop for the dialogue. Okay, now this leverages the stereo width effect. Now stereo width can be very, very dangerous. You have to be very, very careful with this because too much and you can really put things out of whack. What do I mean by that? I mean that as you widen the stereo image, you're effectively playing about with phase. So if there were anything in the center of this 50 people chatting bar sound, that center information is going to basically be pulled down. It's going to sort of disappear. And you're going to end up with something very wide, but it's not really going to have any info in the center. That's okay. That's kind of what we want here because the dialogue is sitting in the center. So using stereo width on ambience tracks, and this is whether you're using it in Essential Sound or directly inside of Audition by itself, we have the same effect there too. By design, the center sort of gets attenuated or pulled down, and it happens to scoop out some space for things like dialogue, okay? There's other reasons to use stereo width in the context of something like sound for picture. This is a great way to just carve out a little space without having to do EQ carving. Two different things, okay? So now that we've got our ambience happening, watch what happens as I start to widen this. Now this is, again, one of those things where less is more. And we're going to go from narrow to wide. So as I increase this slider, if you're listening again in headphones or on speakers, you'll actually get to see that the whole bar sound just starts to go like this. It's going to sound sort of suddenly very wide left and right. Let's take a listen. Okay, so before, after. before, after. Okay? So again, you can really hear that it got wider, right? Kind of split everything apart, and you can imagine now that dialogue kind of sitting quite nicely right in there. And you can see I even increased the amount of large room ambience. And furthermore, just to kind of showcase more capabilities here, what these are actually doing is they're applying, excuse me, they're applying clip-based effects in real time in the background to each of these clips in your sequence. So if we go up to Effects Controls, what you'll actually see on this selected clip is that we've got our stereo expander, studio reverb, the hard limiter because I increased the volume here, and this EQ, I think this was actually already on here, this effect. This is not part of Essential Sound. I'm just going to take that out. Okay, and if we go into something like the studio reverb custom setup, okay, now you have even more presets. Okay, and you can see there's one here called Outside the Club, all right, or Great Hall. So these are all going to sound a little bit different, okay, with varying degrees of echo or decay. So, but for this, I happen to like the large room ambience. I think it kind of fits the environment that we're watching. You know, that's the other thing too. Would you want to use something like a great hall, which sounds like this? Okay, right now we're just listening to the echo. This would be a bar that seats 2,000 people, right? It's too echoey. It doesn't fit the environment. So really, one of the key things when you're doing sound design for any kind of picture is it has to fit the environment you're in. So a large room versus a great hall, two very different things. Now, if we're at the Royal Albert Hall, outside the hall, sharing a cocktail, you know, in between seeing Cream's last show, circa November 1968, then perhaps, yes, you could make the background noise a little bit more echoey, just because it'll kind of lend itself to the majesty of the venue. But here inside of a bar, it's just too much. So again, like you might even use something like this outside the club. So now we're just listening once again to wet signal here. Let's take a listen to this. And we can gradually bring in more of the dry signal. Okay, again, it's a little too discreet for my taste. Maybe something like this room ambience. These are kind of quite small, but could also work. Right? And if we want to increase the size of the room, you've got options to do that up here. So let's make it a little bit bigger. Okay, maybe even a little bit more. If we want to take some of that high-end edge off, we can adjust the high frequency cut. So what this means is that currently it's cutting all frequencies above 6,500 hertz. Now, it's not sort of a harsh cutoff in the sense of like using an EQ per se. It is, but this is cutting it off on the reverb, all right? On the reverb, specifically on the decay. So nothing above 6.5K. By the way, 6.5K, for those of you not into audio, is typically where like sibilance exists. The of the S sound resonates typically somewhere between 5.6 and 6.3 kilohertz approximately. So if you don't want any of that to come through, you want that reverb to be darker. Typically, again, if you're wanting something in the background, it's going to be a bit darker. Let's go to around 5,200 and play this back. And let's also reduce the early reflections. This tends to make things a little bit brighter. And we can also dampen the sound to make it even darker. Okay? And we just took a little bit of that high-end edge off. Okay? And that actually sounds pretty good to me, right? So, now, if I wanted to apply this same setting across all of this is the same file in the timeline here multiple times, I can go ahead and copy this. Now, because I've already denoted these as Essential Sound, that's fine. I just want to copy all the settings. So I'm going to select the other clips themselves, right-click or control-click, paste attributes, and you'll actually see now that you have the option to paste your Essential Sound sections here. loudness, creative, stereo width, and volume, whatever was applied, whatever you used. Okay. And now the same thing gets applied to all of these, right? Saving you a lot of time having to do this manually. So as it transitions from one edit to the other, you can see, right, we've cut this up a few times. And right there, that's an example where we might want to use a little crossfade. It probably won't matter once we have the other sounds in there anyway, but it just makes it a little smoother, a little less abrupt. So I would grab something like my constant power, drag it over top of there, just zoom in a little bit, maybe make the duration a little bit longer. And now it's a very smooth transition, okay? All right, quick question here. All right. My film score music productions can contain up to 250 tracks. I mix in layers and use stereo panning on dual stereo tracks, which is mixed down and mixed with another layer of instrumentation. Oh, okay, yes. All right, I thought there was a question in there. All right, cool. Okay, so we've got the first one treated. Now we're basically going to do similar things to all the others. So let's go to this other track 6 here. And again, we're going to combine. The idea is we're trying to combine all of these. All right, so here is the kitchen ambience. We'll just call this kitchen. This is the one that we got from Loopology. Let's take a quick listen to this as it is. Okay. Now, again, if I want to apply the same thing to all of these simultaneously, I'm just going to have them selected like this together. We've already denoted that these are all ambient types. So now one thing that I can do is, first of all, and I could have done this across all of them, is this little thing here called auto match. In fact, maybe I will do that. So auto match is a really cool option that allows you to take multiple audio files and match them all to the same loudness standard. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, again, we've got sound effects from 3 different sound effects libraries here, and they're all recorded at different levels, all right, with a different peak level most likely, and also a different average loudness. So not uncommonly when you're working with sound effects. Now it depends what kind of sound design you're doing. For stuff like this, which is really ambient, you don't necessarily have to do it. For things like dialogue and especially music, it's kind of really nice to have everything at the same loudness level, right? So whether you're working with, rock music in the bar scene, or classical music in the psychologist office scene, or creepy, ethereal, end of days music in the last scene of the film, it'll basically make everything sound apparently the same in terms of how loud it is, right? And then you use volume controls to adjust accordingly based on the scene, based on the dialogue. So what you can do is simply select this, multiple clips, whatever it is. In fact, here I'll just go ahead and add another one of these. And you can say auto match, and boom, it auto matches to a target loudness of -30 LUFS, okay, which is the standard that we're measuring in terms of broadcast loudness here. So as opposed to dBFS, LUFS is the new standard there. So now these have the same apparent loudness, okay? So back to our files over here, our kitchen files. All right. Add a little ambience on this. Okay. And maybe we'll make these very echoey in the background, okay? Before, after. Super echoey. There's to be no discrete sound here. It's just the noise to, again, kind of make that environment active. And you can see there's a lot of people in the background there. So you just want it to be alive. And this is another example where you might use a little bit of stereo width. Now, there's some buzz and hum in this actual ambience recording. So again, depending upon where that buzz and hum is, sometimes you notice a lot of it went away when we started adding the ambience. Sometimes the stereo width can attenuate that buzz. Sometimes it will actually enhance it. So that might be a case where you use a little bit of noise reduction or do something else to the actual sound effect. Not going to be too much of a problem here, but let's take a listen as I start to adjust stereo widening. Okay, you can actually see it's now creating more of a little ring buzz, a more discrete ring buzz on the left and right. So we're not going to add any stereo widening onto this file at all. I think these are fine, okay? So we'll shrink these up, nice and ambient and in the background. And then we'll come over to the last series of them here. And again, same thing. So maybe for this one we'll use a different ambience, like a room ambience. Before. After. Little stereo widening. All right. Again, we could do a transition there if we want. It's not going to matter. Let's go ahead and bring in the restaurant. And let's bring in our 50-person bar. We're keeping these all at around unity. All right, and now if we bring the dialogue back in, let's go ahead and do that. All right, we'll take a quick listen here.
Hi, hi. I'd like to get a drink, please.
Okay.
Great. I'd like an elderberry liqueur.
Oh, actually, we don't have that.
So,
I've been here before, and I've definitely had it
Without.
here, so you have it.
Oh,
And
okay.
with.
You know, I've only been working here for 5 years, so let me just check on that for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, we...
okay. Pretty cool, right? So, you know, again, we've just now recreated that sort of background environment. Now, hold on. There's a couple of questions in here. So, Yogi's asking, is what I'm doing sound mastering? No. So, this is purely just sound design mixing at this point. We're not doing any real mastering. Now, there is, with regard to loudness, yes, loudness is directly related to the process of final mastering. Here, where we're using the auto match loudness, that's purely to take, again, the average apparent loudness across multiple files and make it the same so that you have a good starting point. Where this is really, really useful, as I mentioned, like I used it on the dialogue that's in this scene, okay? The original dialogue from 3 different speakers, the loudness levels were all over the place. So by auto-matching to the standard for dialogue here, which I think we use the actual ITU broadcast standard of -23 LUFS, they're all going to have the same starting point, and that's a really good thing. So that way you're not doing all this rubber banding and enveloping of volumes constantly to make things louder and softer. Everything kind of appears about the same. And you can often do it with sound effects and ambience, as I showed before as well. Okay. Yeah, FL Studio is very much pattern-based, not particularly geared towards film scoring, really, because other DAWs have better audio editing tools. Yeah, I mean, you could do it, certainly, Skyhawk, right, in Fruity Loop Studio, but, right, I mean, well, you could. It's just that there are others, like Audition and such, that kind of lend themselves a little bit more. Although, to be honest, frankly, I mean, almost any music that's introduced or scored for a picture typically has some kind of loop-based origins, whether it's just going against a metronome or some kind of loop-based BPM that they can adjust based on tempo needs in the scene. So honestly, I think it's just as legit, really. Benedict, can I please check your question? Yes. Someone who watches your film on a laptop will still hear there's supposed to be music in the bar. Yes, and we haven't gotten there yet. So what if you do a high cut to blend the music in a bar environment? It sounds great on headphone speakers, but you can barely hear it on the laptop phones. How do you balance that? Yeah, well, Benedict, I mean, that is the essence of mixing, right? So you have to have multiple ways to listen. Now, anyone who's doing full-on sound mixing knows that generally in any studio, including mine here, which is almost done, looks like some of the soundproofing is partially mounted there, but actually that wall is finished. Those doors are finished there, and the other stuff here is really coming along great. I'll do a 360 pan of it when it's all mounted and finished. You typically want very flat speakers, frequency flat, meaning so that they're not too bright, they're not too bassy, because that way when you mix flat, you know that if you introduce it to something like a laptop or something with a huge subwoofer or in a car, it should sound balanced no matter where you are. Now, laptop that's going to vary. I mean, that's like someone saying, how do you mix enough bass so that you hear it on a laptop? Laptop speakers are notoriously not bassy. So you can only do so much based on the, similarly with a phone or an iPad or something like that. But the key is to having it sound the way it should, is just being able to check it on good speakers. And honestly, not to mix in headphones. Headphones are good for checking. Again, it's another environment to listen on, but not recommended for actual mixing, because they tend to deceive you. All right. So again, and you have to be careful when you're doing high cuts and things, because you don't want to take out too much. And if your headphones tend to accentuate high frequency, you might pull out not enough, and then you get to something else and it's really still very bright, or vice versa. Something like Beats. Beats are great. They're not great for mixing per se, because they artificially enhance bass response. So if you're mixing something, and you don't want it terribly bassy, so you're in Beats and it sounds just right, you might go to a regular stereo system or a Sonos or a Bose or someone's car or whatever, and suddenly it sounds like there's not enough, because the headphones accentuate it by design. So that's why you really want sort of a more flat kind of sound when you're doing your final mix. Okay, and Pierre Julien's asking, why only -30? It would be great to choose depending upon the destination of the video. Yeah, so now, Pierre, that's an excellent comment. So some of the standards, the loudness standards here for auto match, these are fixed in Premiere. Now, this was version 1 of that panel coming into Premiere Pro. Here in Audition, in the Essential Sound panel, where is Essential Video Mixing? Is it this one? Yeah. Here we actually have something called the Master Template View, which I hope we'll be bringing to Premiere Pro in a future update. And in the Master Template View, and I have to open a session here. So here, let me just open something quickly. Okay, that should be fine. In the Master Template View, this is actually where you can adjust the parameters and the standards based on the type of audio you're working with. So let's just say, for instance, this is music here, okay? And we have our loudness auto match. So if I go into the Master Template View here, all right, here you can see you can actually set the target loudness to whatever you want it to be for music, for inside the Essential Sound panel, and you can save out that master template as a preset, okay? So again, we have presets in here already, but this gives you the flexibility to readjust that. So we could save this, it's just telling you that you're modifying user presets. So you've got other options here in Audition that you don't have, unfortunately, on the Premiere side yet. Okay, I'm sure it will be coming. We just haven't gotten there yet. Again, this was the first time we were bringing Essential Sound to Premiere in this last update. All right. Let's go back here quickly because we got to move over to Audition. Yogi, I recently got a pair of Behringer Studio speakers, MS-20s. Is this good for sound design instead of headphones? So I'm not familiar with the MS-20s. If they're meant to mimic the sound of the classic Yamaha NS-10Ms, those are the black and white, sometimes known as the Oreo speakers. Black speaker, black case, white speaker cones. Very, very famous. They traditionally sound horrible. They sound flat and lifeless by design, because the whole idea is that, again, they're supposed to sound very, very neutral. So if it sounds balanced, if you hear bass and you hear dialogue clearly and you hear high end clearly and low end clearly, then when you put it on a big system, it should really be perfect. So that's kind of the idea. So those may be very much like those, I'm not sure. Not surprisingly, a lot of the newer speaker systems from JBL, from Behringer, frankly, even the inexpensive ones are pretty good these days. About the only thing I would tell people not to mix on in general is computer speakers. I mean, do they even sell those anymore? Used to have all those little plug-in, what was it, Creative brand, or I know Logitech still makes some of those. Not knocking Logitech, they're fine. But, like the classic little computer speaker with the 1/8" mini plug, they're not great for mixing. They're not accurate in any sort of way. They're not meant to be, you'd be better off mixing off of like a Bose mini sound dock, you know, or the Beats sound dock or something like that, as opposed to like the old school plug-in computer speakers. But things that are intended to be mixed on, generally these days, they're pretty good. They really are, which is awesome because it gives more flexibility to people on a smaller budget. Okay, so we've got the bar sound coming in nicely here. So the next thing we want to do is work on the music. So I'm actually going to, let me see, I think this is the file I want. I'm going to just move some things around here. Bear with me here for a second. Take this one. Just going to duplicate this real quickly. What's happening here? Why is this selecting that? I'm going to redrag this in. Hold on. Oh, something is stuck. My right click is stuck. Fine then. Be that way. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to pull in a different music file altogether. Heck with you. I don't need you anyway. A little snarky today. All right. Let's go into some of my music, shall we? That could be scary. Okay, and we're going to pull in just some ambient music here. Let's search for... Oh, good grief, come, just find it already. Okay, so let's do this one. Trying to find something kind of fast. Let's import this. Okay. So this is just a standard music track. This is actually, I can't play too much of this because the stream will actually probably get flagged. So I've just got a few seconds here to play this. Let's take a quick listen. All right, it's way too loud, of course. Okay. So the key is, what we're going to do is, once the camera shifts the view, the scene changes. Okay, here. This is where we're going to change the sound of the music, right? It'll start kind of in focus while we're on our lead character there. And when he turns to walk towards the bar, when we see him walking towards the bar, we want that sound to be a bit more echoey, right? To be a bit more in the background by nature, okay? So here what we're going to do is I'm simply going to use a couple of envelopes directly on the... Now, what we'll first do, actually, is tell Essential Sound that this is music. So I'm going to select these clips, music, all right, and once again, it gives us loudness and duration, okay? Now, just to keep in mind, you don't have to use the exact type for the sound that you're working on. What I mean by that is because I actually want that reverb effect. Well, you're going to find that reverb effect in ambience. So we can use ambience on this all the same. Notice it still has loudness. It's got stereo width, which is sometimes nice for music, again, to kind of scoop out a hole for dialogue. And you've got your volume via the hard limiter down below as well. So if we start with this, let's just first and foremost, let's bring this way down. So this is on track 8. So I'll probably start this at around -6. We're going to want to bring this clip down even more because this is super, super hot. All right, this was, again, mixed for Spotify and everything like that. Okay, so let's just see how loud this is now. All right, that's pretty cool, actually. Let's bring it up a little bit more. Okay, so here, this is where now we're going to want to add some of that ambience. There should be a shift. There should be a change to the sound. So here's where we're going to turn this on now. And actually, let's go ahead and just solo this. Let's take the dialogue out of here. All right. And we want to focus on really kind of masking this to make it sound like it's really in the background. So maybe these effects will work. I'm thinking we're probably going to have to go into some of the other presets that I showed you there, where we just have a little bit more options here, and maybe even something like Outside Club right, which is really going to make it sound kind of muffly and in the background. Right? We can introduce a little dry signal maybe. Okay, so we've got that. And again, maybe we'll do just a very, very slight crossfade on this. Very, very small. Okay, now that might be even a little too extreme, but you get the idea, okay? And frankly, I'd maybe even just bring the volume of this up just a little bit. Let's go ahead and bring our dialogue in. Wind this back. Maybe on this first clip too, we'll add just a little bit of room ambience. We just want to widen it a little bit more, make it not quite so up front. So it kind of fits the scene a little bit better here.
Hi, yeah, hi. I'd like to get a drink, please.
Okay, and now what you can see is like, all right, yeah, maybe that's a little bit too much. So
Okay.
Great. I'd like an elderberry liqueur.
Oh, actually, we don't have that.
I've been here before, and I've definitely had it here, so you have it.
Oh, okay. You know, I've only been working here for 5 years, so let me just check on that for you.
Thank you.
okay, so again, simulating that changing of the scene, changing of the cut here.
Hi, yeah, hi.
And you know, that's one of those cool things that just happens. Notice there was that little punctuated mark in the audio. I didn't time that. I just dragged it right in. It just happens to work right on the cut.
Hi, yeah, hi.
It's kind of a nice transition. Now, one of the other things before we got to move over to my to the Creativity 360. One of the other sounds that I probably would do here, which wasn't in the original edit, was, you know, you notice he puts his beer down on the bar. So you should have a plunk down sound, right? There should be Foley for all of those actions. You know, you should always have that because you're watching it. So again, and because the camera's on him. Remember before I was saying you don't want to hear any of the discrete sound of the clanking and people talking because you don't see them, right? They're blurry. They're in the background. They're not in the frame. But when we're on our character and he puts a beer down or a glass down on a table, you want to effectively Mickey Mouse. You want to have a sound for all of those motions, if it makes sense. You know, it would just be like if someone were on screen and and the camera's real tight on them and they start doing this. Well, again, any good sound designer, you'd actually hear. You want to be able to hear that. You want to be able to feel that. That's what draws you in. So, you would spend, again, additional time here finding, glass on bar. And this is, again, if we bounce over to Audition now, if we were to go into our, let's go back to my streaming workspace here. We've definitely got lots of sounds of various, glasses and things, cups, glasses, sitting on surfaces, whatever, that you could apply to something like that. Okay, so let me go ahead and close this up real quick. We're going to just spend the last 10 minutes or so here in Audition, and let's pull up Creativity 360. Okay, all right. Take a couple questions here for them quickly. All right. Okay. F and done. Yes, always listen on final various devices. Yep, to get a variety of examples. Yes, excellent. Definitely want to do that. Okay. Will there be a 2018 version for the next update? I don't know what naming convention per se, but yes, we will have an update of all the digital video and audio apps very soon. What about getting a speaker's frequency graph and compensating in EQ? And you can get a flat sound on any device, theoretically. Yeah, I mean, so, Mayor, that's a good question. And actually, there's a plugin that I have by a company called Soundworks. Let's see, is it in here? Soundworks. Yeah, it's called Sonarworks. Sonarworks reference 3. So this is actually a plugin that allows you, and I was turned on to this by one of our viewers and longtime friend Miko. This actually allows you to flatten out any speaker or a pair of headphones now. In fact, they have dozens and dozens of, so these are like the classic Sony 7506. It's a plugin that has profiles to automatically flatten out your listening devices. It's very interesting. I recommend trying it first because it's weird. It really does change the sound. And if you're really used to the sound of like these headphones I've been mixing with or using for 25 years, when I put this flattening algorithm on there, it was very hard for my brain doesn't understand what to do because it knows what these should sound like. I did do a few mixes on them to test it out, and they were good. They were balanced. But again, I was fighting my own brain. As far as, look at a speaker's frequency graph and compensating with an external EQ for the speakers. Now, you're assuming going from, if they're powered, you'd have an EQ in the chain before the actual speaker, before the playout, or between, your sound device output into an EQ into the speaker. Yeah, you can compensate. That's the concept of tuning the speakers to the room. This is why most high-end, even mid-grade these days, loudspeakers typically have a high-end, low-frequency and or mid roll-off or boost to accentuate or to account for the differences of the room they'll be in. So yeah, that's completely legit. It's just a matter of getting it tuned right? So, that's not something that tuning the speaker to the room is not easy. Very easy to do it incorrectly. Not easy to do it very correctly. But if you know what you're doing, sure thing. Absolutely. Torsten from Germany, how are you? Okay. Let's see what else have we got here. Okay. All right, you guys are just talking about PCs and things. Okay, perfect. All right. So here we are now inside of my editor, and I just want to play this for you very quickly. So this is, again, animation and Cinema 4D work by the one and only Synapse. Shout out to Synapse. You can find his videos, lots of tutorials and training here on YouTube as well, PSYNAPS. You can also find Synapse on Twitch. Great animator. He's great at sound, great at video editing, great human. He's a good human. You really want to check him out. But let's take a quick listen to this. I've turned off, I think I've got all the music turned off here. So this should be just sound design. And let's take a quick listen to the final one before we break it down a little bit. Here, let me see if I can do this at half res. I love doing that. Okay. Now, what I love about this and what's so unique is that Synapse was creating this in the background just on the fly. And then I, of course, did all the sound design afterwards. And the key to making this work, again, is to really find the areas that are punctuated by something visual, whether it was like a little burst of light or something specific. Again, there was that scene of the turning. What do these things sound like? You have to kind of get creative and just sort of make it up because they don't sound like anything. This is kind of a spacey, cool intro. So when you take a look, like that little bzzz right there. What does light sound like when it shines? Bzzz. Is that what light sounds like? No. It doesn't sound like anything. But you Mickey Mouse it. You put something there to punctuate it and then goes, oh, yeah, that kind of works. Sometimes you got to try a lot of different sounds to find the one that actually works and then use in combination with effects to make that a bit more believable. Let's take a quick look again. So again, he had a little flash of light right here. Right, so some kind of little flashing sound. Let's see, is that what this one is right here? Oh, no. That's some rotation sound. Oh, here, I think it's this one down here. this as well. Okay. And you can even see this keeps fluttering after the logo stops moving, but it doesn't matter because it's just to sell the idea that somehow this logo is rotating. And I've got some reverb on there which kind of trails off, so when you hear that, it just kind of works. So let's break this down and kind of talk about how this was authored and how this was put together. All right? I have definitely almost choked myself with my headphone cords while banging away at the keyboard. Do you miss me banging on the Kurzweil? Killing the Kurzweil. I break a lot of keyboards. I knew a guy when I was in school named James Richardson. He was an amazing piano player. I was playing a lot of synthesizer at the time, and I lent him my synthesizer for a gig, and he only really played acoustic piano, which now is 99% of what I do. But and he said, man, I might break a key on this. I'm like, good luck. I play pretty hard. He broke like 4 keys, So I learned from the best. Okay, so let's start out with kind of what we did here and how this all came about. So I'm going to move the... that's all right. I'll keep my media browser. I'll just put it over here for right now. And I'll just bring this up a little bit more. Okay. So the first thing we see when our logo enters, again, is this kind of pulsating light. Right? Now, obviously, it doesn't fill all the space, but we're just trying to find something that kind of, if you're looking at this video, you can actually, it almost looks like I timed some of those to the movement, and I didn't. It's just, again, your brain is kind of getting fooled by the sound behind it. And all of this stuff came directly from Loopology in a collection called, curiously, if you can see it here, I'll zoom up a little bit, Science Fiction, all right? So if we go into the science fiction collection here, start previewing these, there's so much stuff in here. I mean, it's really insane. So we can start with things like electronic clicking, data stream, energy swell. There's that, it says monitor turning off. I guess that's a futuristic sci-fi monitor. Now that's pretty cool, radar sweep slow. So just real quickly, let's just go ahead and make a new file, a new track here, just right here. And if I take this file as it is, and let's place this kind of together with this alien communicator one. Let's hear these two together now. All right. Do you see what I'm saying? It just sort of works. Now, one of the keys is as you're going through something like this, what you really want to do, and you can see I did it here and I've erased some of them, is drop in markers where you're going to have key points where there's a change in sound or where you need a different sound effect. Now, I think most of my these aren't labeled anymore. Typically, like something like this, like here's the change and the camera changes, right? So I knew I was going to need another sound that kind of showcases more of this darker section of the logo. And for that I used, let's see, what is that sound effect here? All right, it's got some movement. So this one is spaceship descending, all right? So once again, you start looking at these, and there's so many. There's blurps, blips, cloaking device. And it's almost like the memory game. You have to start playing these things and going, you know what? I'm totally going to use that for one of those transitions. In fact, I know that one is in here somewhere. All right. And then again, like as you're looking at this stuff, I see there's one right there called exiting hyperspace or something like that. You can see there's a lot in this sci-fi collection here. Electronic exiting. Here it is. Move up. All right. Electronic exiting hyperspace. Okay. So now this one by itself, as you can see, I used it in this section right here. But I did something unique to it. What did I do? Well, I actually had to adjust the duration, the timing, because here was actually the original clip. We'll move this in. Here's what it sounded like. It was too fast. So I actually had to elongate it to make that same last a little bit longer. So here, using one of the techniques I showed you last week, we have this function in Audition called global clip time stretching. And when you have it on an applied to your session, when you hover over the upper left or right-hand corner of your clips, you'll see these little white triangles. This is a stretch functionality, a non-destructive stretch functionality. So as you drag this out, you can fit that sound effect to the duration that you need. Maybe I'll even drag this back a little bit more, something like that. So now when we play this, it lasts for the duration. And you can actually see via percentage how much of an adjustment you've made. And actually the original one was approximately 188%. So I was thinking along the same lines to kind of line those things up. Now again, it looks like I added an additional effect here. Okay, this is like some just scraping metal type elements. And you can see the light as I'm shifting through the scene. This is the kind of thing where you're going, all right, I need to Mickey Mouse the sound of those, of the light rays kind of beaming through. What does that sound like? Well, it sounds something like this. All right, and you can see as we've got that kind of propeller spaceship sound, that's further augmented by some of these other other sounds of movement, okay? But what I really wanted to get into here, because we're already about 7 minutes over, is leveraging effects on your sound effects to just further augment and create a really specific kind of sound, okay? So let me just zoom back out a little bit here. Let's see. Surround headphones, video, taking surround. Yeah. Okay, all right, looking there. Amir's not happy with that transition. Well, again, wait till it's all coming together, okay? Everything is still dry now. That's the idea. Again, everything in pieces. Yeah, you have to hear the end game. Okay? You have to envision what it's going to sound like in the end. We're not done. So let's come back over here. Oh, and by the way, these down here represent sounds that are playing throughout the entire thing. Okay. So again, you're trying to build a bed of what is this kind of spacey logo. So I started by using an industrial aluminum pipe vibrating. And if you listen carefully, you can hear it's kind of, okay? All right? All right? It's kind of pulsating with the light pulsating, all right? And then on top of that, I have this music production element, title imaging, phasey swell. Okay, and then on top of that, I also have a jet airplane revving the engine. And specifically on this, you can see I'm pulling out quite a lot of the low mids here, 113 hertz by about 4 dB. Because again, you've got a lot of kind of low-end muddiness and a jet engine rumble. So I'm pulling out, really, I could probably actually pull out a little bit more of that, quite frankly. But that's all just adding kind of a bed to everything else over top of it. Here's the last one here, imaging electronic whoosh. Okay, so all together as the bed, right? This is a sound bed. And you can see the phase file and that revving engine. It's kind of giving you this like a crescendo. You're crescendoing to the end of the logo here, right? So the idea is that, again, I see Skyhawk saying the propeller sound doesn't sound quite right. Well, again, compared to what, right? It's not a propeller, it's some electronic sound. So it's really up to you to design it how you want it. So for me, I liked it kind of sounding a bit more blippy and rather ambiguous, right? So again, if we were to put some of those back in now, let's take a quick listen here. Now, part of what's making some of that work for me is, again, that we have effects and things applied to this. So first and foremost, you can see that there's a lot of EQ on many of these. There are also, on various clips here, different clip-based effects. So on something like this little sound effect right here, okay, where we have, again, it's kind of Mickey Mousing that little burst of light right there. We've got an analog delay, an analog delay applied at the clip level, okay? And that's literally just there to extend or elongate the sound of that particular piece of sound design for that one little blip in time, that one little moment, okay? And as far as these explosions and things go, pretty simple stuff here, actually. It's a combination of two different sounds. One of them is explosion with debris. So again, because we've got kind of this broken glass thing happening. All right. And I've actually accentuated 60 hertz. So again, this is typically your low end. Not a lot of subsonic here, although again, with a Q of around 8, we are increasing a little bit below into the 50 hertz range here. Not very much, but it's going to give you a nice punch. If we really wanted this to be like subsonic, we could drop this, into the 40 hertz range. Again, if we were mixing or if we're planning on playing this in the theater, and you're going to get more of that LFE thump that you might expect when watching on screen. So you've got that one explosion with debris, and then you have another one here which has kind of heavy fire and crackling. It doesn't have as much low end, but that fire and the crackle really kind of sounds like almost what those simulated glass particles might sound like. And then all together, okay. Now, one of the other things that I think really sells this animation here is when it parks into position. Let me unmute this. Is the sound that it sounds like a door, right? Now, this is, again, a combination of multiple sounds. And this is where I was getting pretty creative because I couldn't seem to get the attack that I really wanted. So I started, again, in our media browser, under our sound effects, we have Foley. And if you go into Foley, you'll see all kinds of things. Plastic bottles, there's broken glass plastic tub rattles. All kinds of things. Most of this, not what we want. Okay. Coins. I mean, there's so much in here. But here's like different doors closing. Drawbridge. Okay. Gate. Okay, so I started with this basic door, large room door closing, mic far off in hallway. Okay, but obviously that's not enough, right? That's not going to cut it. Because this is like a big metal logo. It should be, So again, in Foley, I found something it was called metal pounding. All right. Now this one, you can see I've added a little bit of convolution reverb because the dry sound And you actually see it almost perfectly fits. Like the logo sets into place. Ka-ka. Perfect. Ka-ka. All right, so here it is with the door. Getting a little bit more of that clickiness. But because you've got those particles kind of falling off, you need to add some ambience. You need to add some reverb. We're in kind of dark space here. So to do this, all right, thanks, Evil Cerise. To do this, this is where I used a little bit of reverb. And for this one, I chose our convolution reverb. Now, the convolution reverb uses a series of different independently sampled impulses. So these are actual samples of specific environments that make up the presets and things that you see in here. So I used a hall. You can see there's like gallery, tunnel, living room, classroom, bathroom. Is this one that has shower? Oh yeah, inside the shower. These really do sound like the environments they say. So once I added some of that to that of the metal pound, you can see it has that nice reverb tail. And remember, we still have those bzzz kind of things happening, so this is really going to blend nicely. But it needed a little bit more. It needed to be bigger. So I added an additional sound here. So this is Foley sheet metal. Now again, do you see what's going on here? This is stretched 230% because the original, let's see if I can find the original in here, metal sheet. Okay, metal sheet metal tap 01, here it is. So here's the original right here. Yeah. Kind of plinky, right? Not so great. So for this, I actually wanted the pitch to change. So I didn't just do a stretch to 230%, and I want to show you what's actually happening on here. If I go to the properties panel, okay? So when you're stretching, you've got a couple of different stretch types. The default is mono or polyphonic. This is going to allow you to adjust the duration without affecting the pitch. However, for this, I actually wanted to stretch it out and lower the pitch, right? By making it longer, we're slowing it down. So for that, I'm going to use vari speed, and that's kind of a traditional tape style vari speed. So at 230%, you can even see I dropped the semitones. Right, and you can see it really just falls right into place against the animation. You can still see the marker there, so I knew where the attack had to line up for all of these. And then the last piece was, again, to get just a little bit more of a thump, a low-end thump. And for that, I actually used a Chevy Trailblazer door. This is in the Transportation collection. So all together now, with everything, all right. Okay. And now it has kind of that big, bold, metallic, echoey kind of sound that I was going for. Now, not everyone's going to hear it the same way. It's really up to you. But now, when we put this back, let's grab everything here, and I'm going to leave you with this. And let's see now, why don't I go ahead and bring back in the music. All right, I think I've got that on its own. Yeah, I've got that right here on its own fader. Now, I don't love this music, by the way. This was all recorded and written live, so the music, it's okay. But I'm very happy with the sound design. Here's what the final looked like. Okay. So, again, one more time, now that the music's been readjusted. Okay? And that's it. A lot of experimentation, all using loopology files, a combination of Foley sound effects, sci-fi sound effects, transportation sound effects, and careful use of effects, again, to extend durations. You can use things like delays. To punctuate, obviously, you can use things like compression and limiting. You can see I've got some multiband compressor on some of those clingy, clangy sound effects. Analog delay is another favorite, again, just to kind of give things a little bit more dimension and consistent repeats. I've got that on this laser sound effect here. What is this one doing? Right, so that little beam of light. I want that to linger, so I added a little analog delay. And it lingers, right? You just kind of keep it lingering in there. So all of those kinds of things, it just takes a lot of experimentation. This whole thing was probably done in about 2 hours or so, using effectively stock contents here that were not designed for this purpose. So it's just a matter of getting creative and playing around, and you'll be surprised how easily when you start mixing things together, whether or not it's what this person necessarily hears, you can start to see it as you're hearing it. You might already hear it in your head. So don't be afraid to try out these kinds of things. Remember that you can access all of this real quickly, all of these sound effects under the Help menu. They're all royalty free. You can get them today, download sound effects and more. And if you enjoy any of that, you're very welcome because I created almost all of those. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining me. Thanks for sticking around. Bubble, Kano, Jan Eric, thank you so much. And I will catch up with you guys tomorrow. Now, if you happen to be on the Adobe Students Facebook page, I'll be there tomorrow talking about working with Adobe Capture and how to vectorize anything and bring those vector illustrations from your mobile device directly into After Effects to be animated. And then the following day, I'll be on the Premiere Pro Facebook page, and the following day, I'll be on the After Effects Facebook page 4 days this week at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So thanks again for joining me. Hope you enjoy this. Again, this is a 2-part series. If you want to go back and see a little bit more on the game side, designing sounds for games, you can find part 1 right here on the Creative Cloud YouTube channel. And until next time, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you again. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.